Shock waves roll through the ship as muffled blasts echo below deck. Lights fail, steel groans, and a giant once feared across the Pacific begins to stagger. Smoke drifts like a final breath, and in the rising chaos, the wounded Titan slowly slips beneath the sea. At nearly 1,000 meters below the surface, light becomes nothing more than a memory. The water grows colder, thicker, pressing against the ROV like a warning. Down here, the ocean is not empty. It waits. And tonight, it waits for us. Suddenly, a shape materializes in the darkness. At first, it seems like a cliff, a sheer vertical wall rising from the sea floor. But as the ROV approaches, the truth becomes unmistakable. This is steel. This is engineered geometry. This is something built, not carved by nature. The lights sweep across plates once meant to withstand naval gunfire, now softened by decades of corrosion. They continue outward, and still cannot reach the edge. No ship of ordinary scale could cast a shadow like this. What sleeps before us is a Titan, the second largest battleship ever constructed. A war machine once thought invincible. Tonight, we descend into the cold grave of IJN Musashi, the lost sister of Yamato, a giant too massive to vanish. And yet, here she lies, swallowed by silence. Musashi was born in secrecy, constructed behind high walls and heavy curtains at the Mitsubishi shipyard in Nagasaki. Japan's naval doctrine believed that if war with the United States came, only ships of unprecedented power could match America's industrial might. Thus, the Yamato-class was conceived, battleships so heavily armed and armored that they could engage multiple enemy vessels simultaneously and win. Musashi displaced nearly 73,000 tons at full load, making her one of the heaviest, most heavily protected warships ever built. Her armor belt reached 410 millimeters at its thickest. Her main guns, 9 massive 460 mm, 18.1-inch cannons, were designed to outrange and outgun anything afloat. Each shell weighed as much as a small car. But by 1944, the era of the battleship was ending. The skies had taken control of the seas. On October 24th, 1944, during the Battle of Leyte Gulf, Musashi entered the Sibuyan Sea as part of Admiral Kurita's center force. The objective: crush American forces landing in the Philippines. But American carrier pilots spotted her. Attack waves began early in the morning. They continued for hours. Relentless, coordinated, devastating. Torpedo bombers approached from port and starboard. Dive bombers rained armor-piercing explosives from above. Musashi shot down dozens, but more kept coming. Historical estimates vary, but most agree she endured around 19 torpedo hits, 17 bomb hits, plus numerous near misses that shook her inner structure. Entire compartments flooded. Electrical power flickered. Counter-flooding crews fought to stabilize the list, but Musashi's speed dropped until she could barely move. As sunset approached, the world's most powerful battleship was dying. At approximately 7:35 p.m., she capsized to port and slipped beneath the waves. She took over 1,023 men with her. Survivors watched the giant's stern vanish into the churning sea, her bow pointing skyward before the abyss consumed her. Musashi was built to dominate the Pacific. Instead, she became its prisoner. The ROV sinks through the final 100 meters, drifting through curtains of particulate that shimmer like dust in a forgotten attic. The ocean floor appears smooth, pale, untouched since the day Musashi arrived. At first, the wreck lies beyond visibility. Then, a hard line cuts through the dark, a geometry too perfect to be natural. The ROV angles its lights downward. A mountain of steel emerges Musashi's bow. The colossal bulbous bow, once slicing through waves at 27 knots, now rests half-buried in fine silt. The anchor chain, each link the size of a human head, trails into the darkness like a path leading into ancient ruins. As the ROV glides upward, the ship's scale becomes overwhelming. The hull curves into the void, disappearing on both sides. The pressure sensors on the ROV complain softly, tiny beeps reminding us of the weight of the ocean above. The craft begins a slow approach along the forward deck, where massive steel plating lies warped but recognizable. Shadows catch the enormous openings where anti-aircraft mounts once bristled with guns. We are no longer approaching a ship, we are approaching a world. The first main turret comes into view. Turret No. 1. Even toppled and decayed, it feels impossibly large. The barrels stretch outward, coated in rust blooms and sea life. They once hurled 3,200-pound shells across 26 miles. Now they lie motionless, pointed into eternal night. The ROV circles the turret roof. Scars from armor-piercing bomb strikes remain visible, shattered plates, peeled like metal bark. Behind the forward guns, we drift toward the center section, where Musashi once carried spotter planes. Fragments of the catapult track remain. Corroded cylinders, twisted rails, and a shattered turntable lie half-buried in silt. These float planes once extended Musashi's reach far beyond the horizon. Now, only fragments remain, silent relics of a lost era of naval warfare. The iconic pagoda mast rises out of the wreckage like the skeleton of a fallen tower. Once towering above the ship's command decks, it now lies collapsed, beams twisted like broken ribs. The ROV's lights expose remnants of rangefinder housings and sighting instruments now hollow, their glass long gone. A ladder still clings to the mast's remains, leading nowhere. Aft of the pagoda lies a maze of broken platforms, where dozens of anti-aircraft guns once stood. Triple mounts, twin mounts, solitary guns crowded together in desperation against American air power. Most are gone, ripped from their bolts during Musashi's violent descent. But a few fragments remain. A barrel stub, a firing control ring, a shattered gear housing. They speak of a final battle fought upward toward a sky filled with enemies. As the ROV moves to the port side, the hull becomes jagged, great steel plates torn outward by underwater shockwaves. Here is where torpedoes struck hardest. Armor peeled back, frames exposed, compartments blown open to the sea. Silt pours from the openings like breath from a sleeping giant. We drift toward the midsection, where the funnel once towered. Only its lower structure remains flattened and shattered. Ventilation ducts lie twisted, pointing nowhere. Beneath this region rest the engine's massive turbines that once generated 150,000 horsepower. The hull has crushed inward, making entry impossible. But broken tank supports and auxiliary piping reveal traces of the mechanical heart that once drove the ship forward. The stern lies separated from the main hull, a wound inflicted during Musashi's final moments. The twin rudders are visible, one bent sharply, the other broken away entirely. The separation reveals interior framing beams, bulkheads, torn piping. The debris field fans outward. Shell casings, twisted plates, unidentified machinery. Everything scattered, everything silent. The ROV holds position above the wreck. This was the final refuge for hundreds of men. Their last footsteps echo only in memory. Their voices silenced long before the sea embraced them. The camera lights dim slightly, fading into a respectful hush. Musashi is no longer a fortress. She is a tomb, massive, solemn, eternal. Musashi was built to be unstoppable, an iron titan, forged to dominate the Pacific. But no amount of armor, no thickness of steel, no engineering marvel can escape the tide of history. What remains now is not a symbol of power, but a reminder. The guns that once shook the ocean are silent. The engines that drove her across continents have rusted into stillness. The decks once filled with thousands of lives now lie under drifting clouds of silt. Time has claimed the giant, but the ocean has preserved her memory. Here, beneath 1,000 meters of cold blue darkness, Musashi sleeps, her story whispered by currents, her legacy carried not by victory or defeat, but by the fragile humanity of those who served aboard her. And as the ROV backs away, its lights shrinking to a distant glow, we leave the Titan in peace. Echoes from the deep, stories the ocean never forgot.